All right, let's go ahead and get started, Robert. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your patience while we gave folks a couple of extra minutes to join the webinar. My name is Connie Reddig, and I am a Senior Relationship Manager with Empower. I've had the pleasure of working with the CERF plan for my entire 20-year career with Empower. And so we are happy to bring to you today the CERF Retirement Seminar. A couple of housekeeping items. All of the lines are muted just to keep background noise down to a minimum, but we absolutely want you to ask questions and to be as interactive as possible. So in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is a little comic strip chat bubble. If you just click there, you can submit your questions either to everyone or just to myself, and then we will field those questions with Nancy and Robert. So presenting today is Nancy Griffin, who's the lead benefits specialist and project consultant for CERF. And she's going to kick us off and talk about the CERF pension plan. And then Robert Eastburn is the lead retirement plan advisor for the CERF 457 and 401A savings plans with Empower. And then he is going to present the second part, which covers a lot of topics that are in relation to retirement. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So Nancy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Connie, and good morning, everyone. As Connie said, my name is Nancy Griffin, and I am the lead benefits specialist and project consultant for CERF. I also want to just take a minute to thank Empower for hosting these seminars this year. We believe they're a great benefit to all of our CERF members. And if you submit questions, if you have questions, just submit them and I will stop. Connie will let me know whenever we have them. And if you think of a question after my presentation, I will stay online while Robert is presenting. And that way, if you have questions whenever my portion is done, I will still answer them at the end of Robert's. So I'll just give a little bit of background on CERF real quick. CERF was created in 1994 by the state legislature to ensure that all county employees in Missouri had a pension benefit. That is with the exception of Jackson County, St. Louis County, and St. Charles County. So vesting is 8 years with the county, and CERF, it's years of 1,000 hours or more. In CERF size, 1,000 hour is a full-time year. So you need to have 8 consecutive years of 1,000 hours or more to be vested. Full pension benefits are at age 62. You can retire as early as age 55, but it's at an actuarial reduced rate. Loggers participants contribute less, so therefore they will receive less, which is 2/3 of the non-loggers benefit. CERF does not offer a lump sum payment per state law. Payments are deposited in your banking account on the first working day of every month. And once you have received your first payment, the co-annuitant cannot be changed. We do follow the required minimum distribution, and effective January 1st of 2023, an RMD is required April 1st of the year after you turn 73 for individuals who attain the age of 72 after December 31st of 2022. For those individuals who attain 74 after December 31st of 2032, the applicable RMD age will be 75. CERF computes 3 formulas for each retiree. We have a brochure. If you don't have a paper copy of the brochure, there is one available on our website, which is www.mocerf.org. And we do have the brochure there. It kind of goes into detail with each formula. It uses the one that yields the highest benefit. And in almost all instances, that is the targeted replacement ratio formula. Formulas take into account years of credible service up to 29 and the average of the 2 highest years of salary. Now, I get a lot of phone calls for with people who have more than 29 years of service, and they wonder what benefit it is for them to continue working. Well, CERF does use the two highest years of salary, no matter if they're a year 35 and 34, or 18, 17, or 10 and 9. So if your salary will increase, your average final compensation will increase, so that can be used. And then you also have to remember that we offer a death benefit, so you will continue to have that. We offer a match. So if you're contributing to the 457 plan, then that match will also be given, even if you have more than 29 years. And then, of course, any benefits that you receive from the county, along with the salary for working more than 29 years. Annual statements include a benefit projection, and these are mailed every April. You can run your own benefit projection if you decide you want one. The one that's sent in April is obviously from December 31st of the prior year. If you do not have your member ID, you can call us, because you can run your own benefit projection on the member self-service portal, but you have to log in and then keep your login information with you. Once you've set up for the member self-service portal, unless you go 500 days, I believe it is, you'll always be able to log in. You can call CERF to get your member ID, or if you don't want to run a projection, you want us to run it for you, you can call and we'll always be glad to email or mail you a benefit projection. Necessary forms must be completed 30 to 90 days from your commencement date. It's confusing for people. It's commencement date, and commencement date is the first day of the month following your term date. So say somebody left November the 2nd. Their commencement date would be December 1st, which is the first day of the month following their term date. And that's the date that we go by for paperwork to be filled out. So if you're going to commence 12/1, your paperwork has to be signed on October 31st. And it cannot be signed before September the 4th. So always call your benefit specialist or call CERF. You will go talk to your county, someone in your county clerk or HR department as well. But we recommend you call your benefits specialist and speak with them to get the ball rolling if you're ready to retire. It sometimes takes up to 2 months to receive your first pension benefit. You do get a retroactive payment to the commencement date. So if you leave, actually almost all payments, unless you leave at the very beginning of a month and you're not paid monthly, most pensions receive a retro payment. We don't keep it. You'll get if you're going to commence in December and you leave the middle of November, you'll get paid January 1st, and it will include your retroactive payment for December. If you do not receive forms from the county with the 2V, a packet can be mailed to you. And if you have already retired, if you're term vested and no longer working with the county, just contact CERF 30 to 90 days before you want to start drawing your pension. We do send a letter to those people every year, anyone who's no longer working, just as a reminder that they have a CERF pension benefit. The first form is the Form 2V. You'll complete the participant information form if your county clerk or HR department gives you a blank 2V form. The only thing that you should complete is the participant information. The county needs to complete the salary history and the work history fields. Those are for you to review to make sure that everything is included. We have had instances where people work, realize they worked prior to 1994, which is the inception of CERF, and that time can be included in your CERF pension benefit. We just have to make sure that we have documentation that you were a county employee prior to August 28th of 1994. And then go ahead, Robert, for the next one. on the next one is we call it the retirement application. It's actually where you name a survivor. This is another form that has to be completed 30 to 90 days prior to your commencement date. You can decline, you can either name or decline a survivor. We do recommend, especially if you're married, that you go ahead and list your spouse on here. You don't have to choose the joint survivor options, but if you decline at this point of your retirement process, you won't even see options for a survivor benefit. Along with this form, we'll need a copy of your driver's license, birth certificate, or state issued ID, and also for the survivor that you listed on this form. The next form is the direct deposit form. We do require that payments be made via direct deposit. A voided check or a deposit slip can be returned with this form. The bank has to complete the bottom portion of this form and sign and date it. So it does have to be taken to your bank. And if you don't have a voided check or deposit slip, the bank can include the information necessary, which is the names on the account, the trustees of the account, the routing number, and the account number. And then this is where the bank must complete the bottom of the form. And anyone who's listed on the account needs to sign, any joint account owners need to sign this form as well. Next is your federal form WP. This is if you want taxes withheld. If you don't, there's steps completed included with this form, and you'll see if you do not, you just write no withholding at the bottom of the form. The top portion of the form must be completed, and this form also needs to be signed and dated. And the next is the Missouri state taxes. If you do not reside in Missouri, state taxes cannot be withheld. And we get a lot of calls from people wanting us to help them with their tax forms. We are not tax advisors, and we do not have access to any of your financial information, so we cannot help with tax withholding information. And if you call, we can't tell you what the majority of people do because we don't know your financial situation. It would be a disservice for us to try and help you. And as I said, we are not tax advisors. So we do recommend that you speak with your tax advisor or your financial planner if you have questions about taxes being withheld. So if you're vested and no longer employed by CERF County, you can begin receiving your benefit as early as 55. As I stated earlier, it is reduced actuarially prior to age 62. If you run a benefit estimate and you're not 62 yet, it will show you what that pension benefit would be from 55 to 62. So the normal form of payment is the single life annuity. This is a monthly payment for the rest of your life, but payments stop after you die. So if you receive 12 payments or 25 years of payments, it stops after your death. The next form is when I told you about the Form 2B, the beneficiary form. This is if you list somebody. This is a smaller monthly payment, because payments will continue on to your designated co-annuitant until they pass away. And there are three options. There's a 50%, 75%, or 100% benefit that can be paid to the co-annuitant depending on his or her age. So if you list somebody that's 25 years younger than you and they're not your spouse, they're not going to be able to receive the 100% because it continues on for their lifetime. If your co-annuitant happens to pass away before you, no further benefit would be paid after your death, but your benefit would pop up to the single life annuity amount. Another form of payment is a 10-year certain in life. This again is a smaller monthly payment than the single life annuity. It guarantees at least 120 payments, 10 years, would be paid out to someone. if you die before the 120 payments have been received by you. You can designate more than one beneficiary. And if you live longer than 10 years, the payments continue for the remainder of your lifetime. If a beneficiary would happen to pass away that you list, then you can update the beneficiaries at that time. The level income option is another option. This is for those who retire prior to age 62. It provides a much higher income until you reach age 62, and then at 62, it either decreases to zero or a smaller amount. This is to allow the combined retirement from CERF and Social Security to remain level. So what you're doing is you're exhausting the majority of your benefit before you're age 62. Now, if you're 61 or a little older, it's not as great of a decrease in benefit. If you're 55, the majority of people, it decreases to zero. And a lot of people don't think about your pension benefit going completely away at age 62. It is not age 65, it's age 62. And I always talk to members that tell me that they're going to pick this option because inevitably, when I send that letter that the month before they're going to turn age 62 and let them know their pension benefit is either reducing greatly or reducing to zero, I get phone calls. People don't realize, you know, if you have a, whatever your payment is and it goes to zero, we always get questions. This next one is the joint and survivor level income option, which allows you to list a co-annuitant, but the same thing happens. It also causes a greater adjustment to the initial pensions than just choosing one of the two options, because it would carry on to someone else if something were to happen to you. But again, this is one of the options that reduces greatly when you reach age 62. Your monthly CERF pension benefit is taxable income. We will withhold from Missouri and federal income taxes at your request. You can adjust your withholdings at any time by going on to the member self-service portal or by submitting the updated forms to CERF. This is another way for me to jump in, another time for me to jump in and tell you that if you do not go on to your member self-service portal, there are so many things you can do. You can update your address and phone number. You can, if you're retired, you can update your tax information. You can look and see who your beneficiaries are. It is a great tool. If you do not have not logged in, like I said, call and we can give you your member ID. There is a Missouri public pension exemption. You can visit the website that's listed to read more about this exemption, and we are a public pension plan. CERF's pension plan does provide a cost of living adjustment to participants who have been receiving benefits for at least 1 year. This takes effect each July 1st, and it's 100% of the consumer price index up to a 1% cap. We do send a Form 1099 in January. This form is also available on the member self-service portal. This shows the amount of retirement income you received in the prior year and the amount of taxes withheld. Always remember to keep your most current address on file with CERF. If you move, if you leave for 6 months in the winter, always call and let us know what your updated address is, or you can go onto the member self-service portal and update that yourself. If a retiree decides to commence their pension benefit, decides to go back to work after they have commenced their pension benefit, they have to have a 30-day break in service. This is very confusing. If you leave on November 1st and your commencement date is December 1st, you do not want to go back to work until after January. You can work part-time. You just cannot be hired in a 1,000-hour per year position. If you want to work part-time, count your hours there. It's very important. Once you reach that 1,000 hours, your benefit is stopped and we have to pull back the payment for the month in which you received a payment where you reached 1,000 hours. If you receive a pension payment, it has to be returned to CERF. You can work anywhere else other than a CERF eligible county position. If you want to go work for the city, if you want to go work for Walmart, if you want to go wherever you want to work, you are allowed to work. We don't have access to any of that unless it is a CERF eligible county position that is 1,000 hours per year. While you're still employed with the county, CERF does offer the following death benefits: a $10,000 death benefit. This is not a life insurance policy. It is a true death benefit. If you're married and vested, your spouse is entitled to a 50% survivor benefit. If you're single, the beneficiary on file receives a refund of contributions made. Please keep your beneficiaries up to date. There's a Form 1A and or Form 8. The Form 8 is for those who are single and vested. If you get married, if you get divorced, if you have a death of a beneficiary, please keep your beneficiaries up to date. It is not a fun to speak with a current spouse and tell them that an ex-spouse is receiving a death benefit. That has happened in the past more than once. It is extremely important to keep all of these beneficiary forms up to date because we have to pay to the most current beneficiary form that's on file. We do have two benefit specialists who work on death benefits. It's Kay Harmon and Tara Pope. However, if you call CERF and speak with any of the benefit staff, we will be glad to help with that process and then get the information to them. That concludes my portion of the webinar. If you have questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Nancy, we do have a couple of questions that came through to me on the chat.
Okay.
So one of the questions is, does 80 and out for loggers count for a loggers county affect my CERF pension benefit?
We do not recognize the 80 and out. If you are 62, I mean, it'll be the same thing. If ours is 62. So if you're less than 62, it would be a reduced rate, if that makes sense. It's not going, we do not recognize the 80 and out.
Okay, so that's a loggers measurement only. That has no impact on CERF. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. And then we also had a question about the Missouri pension plan exemption. Generally speaking, can you explain what the function of that is? And can you please share that web address again?
Sure. The web address is, well, it's included. It's www. We would have to go back to that slide. Or the, let's see, I don't know, Robert, if you can go back to the slide. There it is. Thank you. I would recommend that you go to this website and read about it. Again, this is something that you would want to talk to your tax advisor about to see about taxes being withheld.
Okay. All right, that is all the questions that came through. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. We just had another one.
Sure.
As soon as I say that, every time I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
No.
I need to check before I say it. Let's see. Okay, can you explain what you mean by the 1% cap?
Sure.
And also cost of living?
Yes, so there's a cost of living adjustment. Most pension plans have them. Social Security has them sometimes as well. Statute capped, it's in the state statute, and it capped CERF's COLA, cost of living adjustment, at 1%. That is nothing that CERF decides. It's actually mandated by statute. And most of the time, I think there have been 3 years where CERF did not give the full 1%. I think 1 year it was 0.8 and 1 year it was 0.7, maybe 2 years it was 0.8, 1 year it was 0.7%, but most of the time they have given the 1% COLA increase. You have to receive 12 payments. So if you start in June of 2024, you would not receive the COLA until July of 2025. You have to receive 12 payments before that COLA, and it's automatically added to your payment. I hope that explained it.
All right, let's give it a second. I'm not seeing any additional questions.
And
Right,
again,
well,
I
like
will
Nancy
stay on.
said,
Yeah, I will stay on.
that's exactly what I was just going to say. Nancy is kind enough to stay on. So if you think of other questions as Robert goes through his part of the presentation, please submit them via the chat, and we will entertain those as we go through, or maybe even at the end if there are questions for Nancy. So thank you very much, Nancy. Great job, and encourage everybody on the call to take advantage of the resources that CERF has. I know my husband retired a couple of years ago, and just having somebody to help you navigate through the process is really, really key, and it's really, really helpful. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Robert Eastburn. Robert is the lead retirement plan advisor with Empower, and he is the expert on the CERF 457 and 401A plans. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. Robert.
Thanks, Connie, and good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar this morning. On your screen right now, you see a picture with a QR code on that, and you'll see this QR code 2 or 3 times throughout the presentation today. If you scan that with your camera on your cell phone, that will take you to a scheduling tool, and if you have a question where you're like, hey, I've got this question about my CERF savings or overall retirement planning, retirement preparedness that's really not appropriate for the meeting, but I'd like to schedule a time to talk to Robert, that'll allow you to schedule a time where we can have a phone call or a virtual follow-up meeting to talk about those more private and personal questions you may have that are not necessarily appropriate for today's webinar. That being said, though, let's talk about retirement. And we're going to talk about several topics as a part of the presentation today. One is just who is Empower. You know, we are the record keeper for your CERF savings plan. We help more than 18 million people across the United States prepare for retirement through their retirement plans, like their CERF savings, 457 and 401A. And our goal and our job is to be here to help you be as prepared for retirement as you can. So when you think about retirement, I want you to think for just a moment. We're not going to do a survey or anything this morning, but think about what retirement looks like for you. What does that picture feel like when you're thinking about your retirement? And this is the main thing, reason I want you to do this. If we were to take a survey, we would get a lot of different answers, because retirement means different things for different people. Some people want to travel. Some people want to go someplace where it's warm in the winter. Some people just want to spend time with family or friends, or maybe they've got activities and things they want to do. And all of those ideas around retirement are good. But think about what you want and what your picture looks like, because what your picture that you're envisioning for your retirement is going to look like will be a key determining factor in how ready for retirement you are. So as we talk today, we're going to look at several things. We're going to talk about Social Security. Nancy's done a great job covering your CERF pension benefits. I am going to touch on your CERF 457 and 401A benefits. We're going to talk some about healthcare costs. We're going to talk some about estate planning and what you need to have in your estate. We're going to talk a little bit about emotional impacts for retirement as well. So let's dive into the fun one, retirement income. Hey, where's the money going to come from? And will it last? You know, most financial advisors recommend having at least 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income to be able to maintain your standard of living once you retire. For most of us, we find that our expenses actually go down a little bit, at least the first several years once we've retired. And for most of us, that 70 to 90% of what we were making gets us to a place where we can continue to live the same way we have been. Well, where's that come from? Well, keep in mind, it's not going to come from one source. There's going to be multiple sources. Social Security, your CERF pension, for those of you that are in a loggers county, your loggers pension, your CERF savings, if you're participating with that. Those all build up, but also income from other things. Some people farm or run cattle. Some people have rental properties. Sometimes people have a part-time job that they do in retirement to bring in additional income or a business that they start. So when you're thinking about, hey, where is my retirement income coming from? Keep in mind, not one particular part is going to replace your entire paycheck today, but it's looking at all of the parts together and seeing how close we're getting to doing that, to replacing your paycheck. If you're not entirely sure where you're standing at, I am going to encourage you to spend a little bit of time on the Empower website. The picture that I've got up on your screen right now is a picture of what the website looks like. And it has some very strong tools, not only for you to see what your CERF savings balances are, but what your potential retirement income replacement number looks like. Are you getting close to that 70 to 90% of your current income as far as replacing it in retirement? There's a couple QR codes that if you've not downloaded this in the past, there's one for iPhones, there's one for Android phones. Just go and grab that out of the Play Store, or the App Store, depending on your phone type, and it'll walk you through how to register and be able to see all of this information. Connie, I'm going to take just a minute and talk about Social Security, but let me pause for a second. Have we had any questions come in yet?
We don't have any questions at this time.
Awesome, thank you. So Social Security, as those of you know, is something that we all look forward to. And it's something that is going to have different ages for each of us, but some of those ages are going to be the same depending on when we were born, though the middle age may be different. So Social Security has what they call an early retirement age, and that's 62 for everybody, as long as you have at least your 10 years worth of quarters, your 40 quarters of salary. But age 62 is considered early for everybody. That's a reduction. Age 70 is considered maximum. That's where it no longer increases by you just delaying your benefit. But then depending on when you were born, it's your full benefit age where you get your normal benefit with no reduction is either age 66 or, unfortunately, if you're like me, born 1960 or after, it's 67 to get that full benefit. And a lot of times I get questions from folks saying, hey, Robert, what age should I take my Social Security at? And that one, unfortunately, is a moving target because it's different for all of us. So let me show you just some examples of how taking it at different ages might impact your payments over time. So we've got a possibility of one individual looking at taking it at age 80. Or living, I should say, till age 80. If that individual took it at age 62 and just added up all their payments, it would have been about $223,000 over those 18 years. However, had they waited till age 66, it would have been about $299,000, which dramatically more in that example. But if they lived till 80 and waited till 70 to take it, they would not have drawn as much in that example. They would have only drawn $287,000. Now, if a person lives to age 85, then waiting till age 70 draws them more total money. And if a person lives till age 90, waiting till age 70 to draw, it definitely draws more money than at the different ages. Now, here's the question. I mean, none of us know for certain how long we're going to live, but I encourage individuals, when you're thinking about this, look at your family of origin. Look at how long did your grandparents live? How long did your parents live? Your aunts, your uncles? What is your health situation like? And that can kind of give you a guide as far as when you might be able to draw your Social Security in order to maximize your total dollars. Now, that's to maximize it, but that's not the entire story. Because sometimes, in order to be able to retire when we want to, we end up taking Social Security earlier so that we can live that retirement the way that we need to or the way that we want to. Maybe, and I'm just making up an example, but maybe for an individual that at age 64, between that and their loggers and their Social Security and their CERF pension and their CERF savings, that gets them to where they want to be. So maybe in their situation, they say, hey, I'm not worried about maximizing my total Social Security benefit. I'm more worried about, I want to go retire and do the things I want to do today. So just something to keep in mind. I will encourage you, if you have not done so, you can go to ssa.gov and make sure you go to .gov and not .com. So ssa.gov for the Social Security Administration. You can register on their website and be able to download and view your own personal Social Security benefit. I checked mine just last week. And the really nice thing is if you've not been out there in a few years and looked at this, they've changed how it prints out and how it shows. So it shows your estimated payment at every age from age 62 to age 70. If you're not already over age 62, then it would just go from your current age to age 70. So it gives you a really good idea for you personally, based off of your own earnings history, what your Social Security might be at different ages.
Hey, Robert,
Yes,
we do have a question. Is my Social Security benefit taxed?
possibly. And it's going to depend on some other factors. We are going to look at some taxation issues further in the presentation. So Connie, I'd like to wait to cover that in detail until we get there, but the answer is possibly, and we'll go into more detail after that.
All right, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Great questions, folks. So let's talk a little bit about healthcare. Now, one of the things that Empower has found is that for many people, healthcare will be the largest single expense in retirement. We did a lifetime healthcare comparison for an age 65 couple and that retired in 2021, and they could look to spend somewhere over $660,000 on healthcare costs in retirement, excluding long-term care costs. So for most of us, throughout our retirement, our healthcare costs may very well be that largest single expense. And there's several things that are causing that to happen. One, people are living longer than they used to in general. Two, healthcare keeps going up, and it's rising in general faster than regular inflation. And three, we're seeing a lot of times people are retiring before they're eligible for Medicare, which kicks in at age 65, meaning that they're paying for things on an out-of-pocket basis or buying their own insurance if they don't have it covered through somewhere else. So with that being the case, I want to take a few minutes this morning and just talk about some of the basics of Medicare and just touch on this. Now, please keep in mind, when I'm doing this, I am just providing you information. I'm not making a recommendation for you as far as what you should do regarding your own personal Medicare. I do not carry life and health insurance licenses. So this portion of the presentation is meant to be more informational in nature, and I would recommend strongly that you talk to a qualified person about your own decisions regarding your Medicare choices. That being said, let's talk a little bit about Medicare and kind of what we would look at together. Generally, there are four major parts to Medicare. Part A of Medicare covers hospitalization. Part B is your outpatient type medical coverage. Those are what we typically refer to when people say the words traditional Medicare. That's what they're talking about. You know, in the early 2000s, prescription drug coverage was started to be offered through Medicare underneath the Part D plan. And now there's also this Part C plan, and we're seeing a lot of information on TV about this right now because it's what's called open enrollment, where Medicare Advantage plans. And a Medicare Advantage plans takes Part A, Part B, possibly Part D drug coverage as well, and bundles that together inside of one plan being offered by a private insurance company instead of being offered directly through Medicare. And sometimes there's cost advantages, sometimes there's not in that, depending on what you go with and what you need to have done, what services you need. But keep in mind, these are the four big parts. And regardless of how you do that, there's going to be some costs that may not be covered. And if you are doing traditional Medicare, Parts A and Part B, rather than getting a supplement plan or an Advantage plan, a Part C, I should say, you may be qualified and may be eligible to get a supplement, which is a separate type of plan that's offered by a private insurance company. It does not replace Parts A and B of Medicare, but it comes in beside of it to help cover things that Parts A and B do not cover, such as co-pays, co-insurance, deductibles, things of that nature. So generally, you do not have a Medicare Advantage plan, a Part C, and a supplement plan at the same time. A supplement plan is meant to go with traditional Medicare Parts A and B, where Part C, a Medicare Advantage plan, replaces all of that underneath one plan. But regardless of how you go about doing this, Medicare becomes available when you turn age 65. It has nothing to do with your spouse's age. It is entirely on your age. You can still be working and enroll in Medicare. You can still have other health coverage and enroll in Medicare. And whether or not you're collecting your Social Security yet has no bearing on whether or not you need to enroll in Medicare. The 3 months before the month you turn age 65, the month you turn age 65, and up to 3 months after the month you turn 65 is considered your initial enrollment period. So that's a 7-month window around the month you turn 65. 3 months before, the month you turn 65, and 3 months after. You need to be talking to a qualified professional because you either need to sign up during that period or you need to have a qualified exclusion where you don't sign up during that period. And if you don't have one of those two things and you just don't do anything with it and you weren't qualified to delay signing up, you could end up having late penalties on your Medicare Part B premium for the rest of your life. So when you're coming up to age 65, please, please, please talk to a qualified professional. Make sure you know what you're doing. And if you need to file paperwork, file the appropriate paperwork so that you do not have gaps in coverage or a penalty on your Part B premium that lasts the rest of your life. So a couple other things to know about Medicare. Once you make your enrollment, you don't need to renew every year. Right now, we're in what's called Medicare open enrollment between October 15th and December 7th, where you can change your plans around every year. Just like, your counties probably have an open enrollment where you can make modifications to your healthcare benefits through the county once a year. Medicare is very similar to that. So, Connie, before I move on, have we had any questions come in about Medicare?
We have not had any questions at this point.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Some of your counties offer a high deductible insurance plan with a health savings account option. And if you have that, and that is the way you are covered, you may want to look very long and hard about participating in that health savings account option. Now, you need to really take a close look at what's being offered to you, but potentially it has what's called triple tax benefits. And let me just make up an example. Let's say I had a health savings account and a high deductible plan. When I deduct part of my pay and I volunteer to put that in that health savings account, it's like I didn't earn it this year. It comes off of my taxable income, potentially saving me money now. The earnings on that money inside of that health savings account grow tax deferred. So I don't pay taxes on the earnings every year. And someday in the future, even in retirement, if I pull that money out for a qualified healthcare cost, I don't pay taxes on the contributions or the earnings. So that's not taxed when you put it in, not taxed when it grows, not taxed when you take it out and spend it. It's one of the very few triple tax benefited plans out there. Now, with Empower finding that most of those healthcare costs are our single highest expense in retirement, having a funded health savings account in retirement can help with those. So I would encourage you, if you've got this being offered through your employer, through the county, check and find out the details and see if it makes sense for you. It's something you really should explore and take a look at to see if it is a fit for your situation. Now, Empower does provide some services as well on the website. When you log in, you can go to see what healthcare costs might look like for you in the area that you plan to retire at, the state you retire, whether you stay in Missouri or you move to a different state. There's some check boxes on this where you might, the common conditions that people that are retired deal with. If you deal with any of those conditions, you can check that. It'll give you an idea of people that deal with those same types of challenges, what their healthcare costs look like. So that can help you get an idea of what your costs might look like as well. Connie, I do want to share as well this Medicare.gov. And just like we talked about SSA.gov earlier, when you go to look at Medicare, make sure you go to Medicare.gov and not .com. You can put in your zip code and it will show you all of the different types of Medicare plans and coverages that are available in your zip code. So that you can compare the different coverages, costs, exclusions, inclusions, get an idea of what might be available where you live. And especially as you're getting close to age 65, what might be a viable option for you as an individual based off of your needs. Connie, I'm going to transition into talking for just a few moments here about emotions regarding retirement. Before I do that, did we have any additional questions come in about Medicare or healthcare costs in retirement?
We did not. I did just want to add a comment based on personal experience with working with my mom, and that is encourage everybody to, once you do retire and evaluate those benefits, to evaluate them every year, because there can be some considerable cost savings if you do that. So it's not kind of just a choose it and kind of set it and let it go type of option. I mean, certainly you can do that. But it is beneficial to review that and again, go to that website every year and take a look at what the different providers offer, because I know in my mom's case, it was a substantial cost savings to just take the time to do that. So still no questions on that though. So I will just turn it back over to you, Robert, to talk about emotional transition to retirement.
Thank you, Connie. So, hey, this is something that a lot of times I don't think about. But retiring is emotional. It is a huge change, and it's okay for it to be emotional. And a lot of times the experts are finding most people walk through 5 different stages. And I think all of us here that are on the presentation today are in this growing interest stage that we are liking the idea of retiring at some point. And maybe that point, depending on how today's going, maybe that point was yesterday we wanted to retire, right? But there's a point of interest. And then when we do retire, wow, it snowed and I didn't have to get up today. This is exciting. This is great. I love it. But then there's some stress that comes along with it. Everything has changed. What's my life look like? What do I do today? I don't have a whole lot on the calendar. I'm used to being at work and this isn't there. And then finally we go through this stage where we're kind of adjusting and that things are kind of becoming the new normal. And then over time, things settle down and end up becoming what we're used to. And let me just encourage you to give yourself permission to understand that retirement is new for most of us. Most of us, we do it once, right? It can be scary going through the details. CERF and Nancy and their team are there to help you with your pension details. We're here to help you from Empower with your savings account details, folks. Don't feel like that if there's some scare or some fear that goes along with your retirement, don't feel like you have to deal with that on your own. Come and get your questions answered. Let us talk with you. Let us help you with these types of things. But give yourself permission to walk through some stages of emotions as you're dealing with and transitioning into retirement. Now, no two people have the exact same things, but these are some common feelings that people experience: loss of identity, loss of structure, trouble making decisions. Some people deal with depression or loneliness, procrastination, or, hey, I'm in this stage of my life. This is a huge stage. What comes next? And these are all normal feelings, and just encourage you to realize that and give yourself permission to walk through this. Some of the things people have found that have helped in others is if you've got a hobby or a volunteer work or some type of activity or social engagements or even part-time work that you're dealing with, that you're working through in retirement, that can really help. And I would encourage you to ask yourself this question: what am I retiring to, rather than just what am I retiring from? So have an idea of this is what the picture is going to be. And that can also help with dealing with emotional impacts of retirement. I want to talk a little bit about investing in your CERF savings retirement accounts and in your other retirement accounts as well. These principles would apply. But generally, most individuals, as you get closer to the time that you need the money, generally you're going to want to be less aggressive for most individuals. You've got a long time before you need the money, then generally you can afford higher risk on your investments. At Empower, we really identify that there's 3 different big groups of investors. We call it the do it for me investor, the help me do it investor, or the do it myself investor. And we don't have a preference of how you go about doing your investments. We just want to make sure it's the right thing for you. So I want to talk a little bit about all three types of these investors. The do-it-for-me investor. This is somebody that wants professional help. They want professional assistance so that they can feel more comfortable about their investments, make sure their investments transition in risk over time. They want to get a plan built for them and follow that type of a plan. Now, Empower offers that through our My Total Retirement service. Some of you on the webinar today might already be participating with that. If you are, that's also called managed accounts. That's where you pay a small fee and then Empower builds a mix of investments for you. We review it monthly, and over time, we make changes to those investments based off of your needs and the information you've shared with us on your goals. So that's what we kind of call the do-it-for-me investors. That help me do it investor category is people that want some information, they want some guidance, but they want to make the end decisions, the ultimate decisions on what they're invested in and when those investments are changing. So that might be someone that picks like a target date fund or somebody that conducts a meeting with me where I do a retirement readiness review with them, but they elect to go out then and make the changes to their own investments based off of that. And then this do it for me investor. This is someone that feels comfortable picking their own investments and managing the changes to those investments over time. And we just encourage, if you fit into this category, to make sure you take a look at your investments from time to time and make sure they're a good fit for you. I will share this. It's been a lot of years since I was 16 years old. But when I was 16 years old, I had a dream car in mind that I wanted to drive, and it was a Lamborghini. And I got to tell you, folks, that didn't happen when I was 16 or 17 or 18. And, it still hasn't happened, but Lamborghini probably isn't my dream car anymore. When I was 16, I wanted something that looked really good and was really fast, probably dangerous things for a 16-year-old. At this point, I just want a car I can get in and out of that doesn't hurt my back if I'm driving all over the place, right? And gets good fuel economy. That's not a Lamborghini in any of those descriptions. Well, as I've aged, my choice in car has changed dramatically. And folks, as we walk through our careers, our choices in investments may need to change almost as dramatically as that does. The way that I invested when I was 21 is not the way I'm invested today, and probably would be dangerous for me to assume that type of risk as what I did when I was 21. I don't necessarily have as much time for rebounds in the market. One of the things I'm going to say is if you do not know what type of investor you are or how you're invested in your plans, I want to encourage you to schedule one of those retirement readiness reviews meetings with me. There's going to come another slide later in the presentation where you can scan the QR code and schedule a meeting. At the end of the presentation, depending on your browser, it may pull up a pop-up box that allows you to go to my scheduling tool and schedule a meeting that way as well. For those of you that have done those in person or done those virtually in the past, you know that those are not sales meetings, but basically we talk about your goals, when you want to retire, what your retirement income is looking like, if you're on track for the retirement that you want. And if you are, that's wonderful. If not, we can look at, should you make changes? Should you consider changes to your investments to help you be on track, or your savings rate, or how your savings, all of those factors. And when we do that, I end up taking what's called a fiduciary responsibility for you, meaning I am going to be acting in your best interest to help you understand where things are at and if making changes are likely to benefit you or not. Those meetings typically take 30 to 45 minutes, and we can do those virtually through a WebEx thing like what we're doing today, or over the phone if you prefer. Connie, before I start talking about taking money out, do we have any questions at this point?
No questions at this point.
Okay, folks, I have not said this today, but I don't work on a commission, but I do get paid for every question you ask. So if you can come up with one or two, I'd appreciate it. No, that really doesn't happen. But I will say this, if you have questions, please send those over to Connie, and we definitely want to fill those for you today. While you're thinking about your questions, I'm going to talk a little bit about withdrawing funds in your retirement. And there's some factors that none of us can control. We don't know for sure how long we're going to live. We don't know for sure what type of market returns we're going to get on our investments. We're not sure what inflation's really going to be over time, and we're not entirely sure what our expenses are going to be. So one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is to go out and try the withdrawal calculator on the Empower website. This shows you based off of how much you've built in, how much you're taking out per month, how long your money might last. So this gives you some good tools, and there's a variety of ways you can take money out of your CERF savings plan in retirement. So Connie, if a person wanted to, they could take it all at once when they retire. Now it's going to be taxable income to them, what they've deposited to this point, but they could take it all at one time, or they could take a little here, a little there as they need it, just as needed, or they could set up a monthly draw as far as so much a month every month. And sometimes, especially when folks retire and their CERF pension, their Social Security, maybe if they have a logger's pension, that all adds up to being similar to the paycheck. They don't necessarily need their 457 and 401A money immediately. There's nothing that says you have to start taking it out when you leave the county until the point you get up to those required minimum distribution ages that Nancy talked about earlier. Now, we had a question earlier about taxes, and I want to jump in on this and talk a little bit about taxes. So generally, when you take money out of retirement accounts, they are taxed as ordinary income. So anything you've got inside of your CERF savings, 457, 401A money, when you take it out in the future, it's going to be taxable income to you as you take it. Now, things that are not taxed would be things like Roth contributions. And the reason I bring that up today is starting in January, you are going to have the option of making future contributions inside of your CERF 457 as either pre-tax, which is what they have been to this point, or Roth contributions, which are after tax, or a combination of both. Now, the way that a Roth contribution works is it goes in after tax. It does not reduce your taxable income the year you put it in. If you meet the qualifications, though, to take it out in retirement, and you've met the qualifications, so it's a qualified distribution, it comes out without any taxes on the contribution or the earnings. Now, folks, I want to say that there are going to be 2 additional webinars that we're going to host at different times in December to talk about this Roth option and talk about the tax treatment and more information on that. If you have questions about that, watch your email for the invitation. I'm going to encourage you to come to one of those webinars. At that point, we'll talk in more detail. But you are, starting in January, going to start having the option of doing future contributions as Roth in addition to pre-tax for your plan. There was a question about Social Security being taxed earlier. And this slide shows a little bit of how they look at it. Depending on what your total income is from all sources, a portion of your Social Security may be included in your taxable income to calculate your tax liability. So on this slide, we're looking at an individual. And for the data that we're looking at, if that individual made less than $25,000 of income, then none of their Social Security would be included in their income when calculating their tax. But in that same individual, if they made, for example, $30,000, then up to half of their Social Security would be included in their income to calculate their tax rate. Now, please keep in mind, I'm not saying that half of their Social Security would be taxed, or their Social Security, I shouldn't say it this way, that I'm not saying that their Social Security would be taxed at 50%. I'm saying half of it would be included to calculate the tax. And then at that time, if an individual made $34,000 or more, up to 85% of their Social Security would be included in their income to calculate what their tax rate is. Now that's, it's being taxed for income tax. Your Social Security is not being taxed by Social Security, but it could be taxed on an income tax basis. So much like Nancy said earlier, when in doubt, talk to your tax person. Get a good qualified tax advisor, help you walk through those steps, find out what's the best way for you to claim, and how that might impact your total tax liability. I do want to talk a little bit about inflation this morning. And inflation is something that we're all well aware of. You know, we had a lot of years without much inflation. In the last 2 or 3, there's been quite a bit, as we all know. But generally, there's 2 types of expenses we have in retirement, and that's fixed expenses, things like a fixed rate on a mortgage, things like that, things that are going to be the same every month. We know how much they're going to be. And then we have those variable expenses. And those variable expenses are things that are going to fluctuate every month. Food, fuel, entertainment, clothing, things of that nature. Stuff that over time we might see the cost of inflation impact more in the short term on those variables because they're changing and the expenses are changing every month. This particular slide shows you some examples of how much things have increased over time. As you can see, not everything increases at the same rate, but over time, different expenses have increased simply because of the cost of inflation. And the reason I share this with you is over time, things are going to cost more. And, you know, if they tell me that if I sit down to work with a couple and they're both age 65, there's a 50% chance at least one of them is going to live into their 90s. So we're looking at least needing to plan for 25 to 30 years of retirement as far as expenses and income. And over time, this is where your CERF savings plan can really benefit you and make sure that it's invested appropriately for you, because we may be able to help you through that, to grow that, to keep up with the cost of inflation. And when you're thinking about your CERF savings, your 457 and 401A, I want you to think about managing your investments inside of that, not just to the day you retire, not just to retirement, but managing that through retirement. Because in some cases, we find that people that have worked at a county 20, 25, 30 years, they still have their CERF savings 20, 25, or 30 years after they retire from the county. So we need to make sure that your investments on that are still appropriate even after you retire. And the nice thing about it is even once you leave county employment, Work from Empower are still going to be available to work with you and help you on your CERF savings money. That doesn't end when you stop working for the county. So this particular slide shows you the relative size and overall inflation of what $100 would have bought in 1980 versus what $100 would have bought in 2021. And we can project it would be quite a bit smaller than that in 2023 with the inflation in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Connie, any questions on that before I move into estate topics?
There were a couple of questions. So kind of backing up a little bit, you talked a little bit about Roth. One of the questions, and I know you'll be covering this in your webinar in December, but the question is, can I roll my Roth IRA into my 457 plan?
Awesome. Connie, that is a great question. Thank you, whoever submitted that. Unfortunately, the answer is no. And that's not a CERF provision, but that's a Roth IRA provision into an employer-sponsored retirement plan. It's just not allowed for a Roth IRA to go into like a Roth contribution inside of a retirement plan like CERF savings.
And then we also had a question about required beginning date. So you talked about the required minimum distribution. At what age are we required to start taking that?
Okay. If you are not already retired and taking it, your age is at least 73. And it's going to follow that same pattern that Nancy talked about on her slide. And if you've not turned yet 73 by the year 2035, it'll go up to 75. Now that's under the current tax law. The nice thing about it, Connie, is let's say I retired from the county and I'm not 73 yet. When I turn 73, if I'm required to take a required minimum distribution, Empower's going to send me a letter and say, hey, you got to take it. And this is how much has to come out. And then they'll make sure that I know what those numbers are. But it's either age 73 or age 75, depending on your date of birth, if you're not already required to draw it.
Okay. And then how long before I plan to retire do I need to contact Empower about my 457 and 401A plans?
Okay. The answer to that is you don't have to. So, like your CERF pension, Nancy said you guys need 30 to 90 days in advance to be filling out paperwork. There is no pre-paperwork you fill out on your CERF savings with Empower. Once you have been off payroll 30 days or longer, you are eligible to take distributions. And the easiest way to do that now is to call the Empower customer service line and make your distribution over the recorded line. That being said, I will show that a slide later in the presentation that has that phone number on it.
Okay. And another one, what are some considerations for leaving my money in the CERF plan after I retire versus rolling it to an IRA?
Okay, yeah, great question on that. So everybody's situation is going to be a little different. So I'm going to encourage you to look at several things. One, if you are currently under 59 and a half, your CERF 457 money does not have a minimum age once you leave county employment to tap that money. So if I left at 55 and I had CERF savings 457, I could tap that money when I leave. If I roll that money in that 457 into an IRA, I am now subject to the 59 and a half minimum age rule from the IRA. So a little bit about your situation will determine whether it's better for you to leave it or to move it. Second thing I would look at is I would look at what am I investing in inside the IRA potentially that I'm looking at. How much is it costing me versus what are the expenses for having it with Empower? The third thing I would say, let's say I retired today, Connie, and I don't make that decision now, but 3 years from now, I want to make that decision. I can make the decision 3 years from now. There's not a window of time where I have to make a decision about rolling it out. But once it's gone and you've closed your CERF savings account, there's no more money coming into your CERF savings because you're retired and you've closed it down to zero, we can't accept money back in. So you've had this relationship with Empower for all of these years. I would encourage you to look at the pros and cons of what you're being offered inside of the IRA before making that decision. Is kind of how I would evaluate it.
All right. Thanks, Robert. That's all the questions for right now.
Okay, awesome. So, hey, you guys are going to get tired of disclosures, but I got to give you another one. I am not a lawyer and I'm not giving you legal advice, but I do want to point out some things you need to think about as you're coming up to retirement, as you're thinking about retirement, to make sure that things are in good order. And I am strongly going to encourage you to talk to qualified legal counsel on this. But you do need to have some type of a plan. Whether that be a will or a will and a trust. But these types of plans help you determine who your beneficiaries are, who your heirs are, your friends, your family members who may want things to go to, charitable institutions. Now, Nancy talked earlier about making sure that your beneficiaries with your CERF pension are up to date. You have beneficiaries with your CERF savings, your 457 and 401A. You need to make sure they're up to date as well. And changing them on CERF savings does not change them on CERF pension. Updating them with Nancy on CERF pension does not update them on CERF savings. So anything that has a beneficiary designation, whether it's CERF pensions, CERF savings, loggers, your life insurance, whatever it might be, if it has a beneficiary designation, make sure it's up to date with what your goals and wishes are. I would also say that a will or itself helps to determine for things that don't have beneficiary designations, who owns it should you pass away. But estate planning goes more than just your possessions, the things that you own. It can deal with the guardianship of your dependents, whether those be children or grandchildren that you're responsible for. End of life medical care decisions for yourself. What do you want to have happen if you're in a medical situation and you can't voice or communicate your own wishes? So those types of things are part of your estate planning as well. So wills or trusts to talk about how the property is going to be distributed. Insurance can be a part of your estate plan because that can help fund expenses for those that you leave behind, whether that be their lifestyle or funeral expenses or whatever it may be. An executor is somebody that's responsible to make sure that your will is carried out. A trustee is someone that is responsible to make sure that the provisions of your trust are carried out. Make sure as well that if you have a trust, that you actually have property in that trust, or that you have a mechanism to move property into that trust. I've heard it explained that you think of a trust as a bucket, and you can put all kinds of things in the bucket and carry it around. But if you don't put anything in the trust, it's just an empty bucket. And make sure that if you've been working with a legal counsel on creating a trust, that you've then worked with them on what you need to title into that trust or designate into that trust through a designation process. And make sure that you actually have it funded. Now, again, on the Empower website, there's a thing that talks about estate planning, not to tell you what to do, but to give you some tips about what you may want to look at. So where do we go from here? Folks, I'm going to strongly encourage you again, if you have not registered on the Empower website, you really should do that. There are some very, very powerful planning tools to help you see what you're tracking for, how making changes might impact that, and what your lifestyle might look like in retirement that are available to you at absolutely no cost through this website. And I would encourage you to spend some time on that. I would also, when you're out there, I'd encourage you to take a look at My Financial Path. This is a really cool service in that it'll ask you a few questions, and then it'll help you determine what's the best use of your next $1 of money that you can spend. Should you put it in retirement? Should you use it to pay down student loan debt? Should you use it to pay off a car or a house payment? Should you use it to build an emergency fund? So it's more than just retirement, but it's overall financial wellness. And again, that service is available to you without cost because of your plan. So if you need to talk to customer service, that is the 800-701-8255 number that's listed here. If you need to schedule a time to talk to me and you want to do one of those retirement readiness reviews, or just have questions about your account you want to walk through, scan the QR code and book one of those individual meetings with me, and I'll be glad to help you any way I can. Here is how you register for the Empower website. You go to empowermyretirement.com. You'll click in username and password. If you've not been there before, it'll tell you that you'll need to register. If you have been there but you don't remember your username and password, there's this login help button that'll help you recover that. I've got 3 pages of disclosures here that I've just shared. So that's going to end my presentation today, Connie. I'm going to go back to this page and stop and pause the presentation just to see if we've had any additional questions come in this morning.
We do have a couple of questions focused on contributions into the CERF 457 plan. So the first question is, how often can I change my contribution into the 457, and how do I go about doing that?
Awesome. So on the CERF 457, you effectively can change it as often as you need to throughout the year. Up, down, start, stop, it's up to you. There are 3 ways to change it. You can go out to this customer service line recorded on the line there. Additionally, you can go through and talk to your HR person in your county and fill out a form that they will turn in to Empower to make the change. And then, Connie, I'm going to try to pull up an example of the web portal and show everybody where they can try to process the change through the web portal once they've registered. That's going to take me just a moment to get that going.
Okay.
While I'm logging into that, did we have other questions?
The other question was about special catch-up. So heard something about what's called special catch-up. Can you explain what that is?
Yes. So there's 2 different types of catch-up contributions that can be made. One of those is an age-based catch-up, where if you're age 50 or over, you can put in additional funds into the 457 and 401A beyond the IRS limit which the IRS limit this year is $22,500 for 2023. So if you want to contribute more than that, then you're going to go into either the age-based catch-up, which adds another $7,500 to it that you can do. There's nothing that you have to fill out paperwork-wise for that. However, if you are in the last 3 years prior to retirement, there is a special catch-up rule for the 457, which would allow you to double the basic contribution of $22,500, making it roughly $45,000 that you could defer from your salary for those last 3 years. That is the amount that, to do that, there's paperwork. And if you find that you need to contribute more than the $30,000 and you're close to retirement, schedule a meeting with me and I'll walk you through the provisions of seeing if you're eligible for the special catch-up. And then Connie, let me share real quick on the website here. And I'm going to try to bring this up where everyone can see this. So bear with me just a moment. Looks like I'm going to have to stop and reshare. So I apologize for the little bit of glitchiness we're all going to experience. There we go. You should be seeing a made-up example. This is a fictitious individual's account. But right here on the Empower website, if you want to change your contributions, this contribution slider, you can just grab it and pull it and change it. Or you can click into it. And this is what's going to become available in January. If you wanted to change to Roth, you can grab the Roth and change it, potentially reduce your pre-tax contributions or leave them the same. So folks, that's how you do it. And then you click Review Changes and Submit. And that would be a way through the Empower website for you to be able to change your withholding amounts from your paycheck. Connie, did we have other questions come in?
First of all, thank you for that demonstration. It does a great job of showing all of the functionality on the website and how easy it is to do that. Yes, we do have another question. The question is, what is the Clay County match? Which I would assume is also the same question. What is the CERF savings plan match? So can you cover that, please?
I'll be glad to. So the match that goes into the CERF savings plan is deposited into the 401A, and it is actually CERF that funds that, not your individual counties. So that is a benefit that you have as a CERF participant that is made directly from CERF. Now, the board of directors from CERF vote every year on what that match is going to be, and it is subject to change annually. Usually, they make an announcement, usually March or April every year is when that comes out of what the match will be for the current year. For 2023, the match that is paid is a 50% match of your contributions into the 457 up to the first 4% of your salary. So up to the first 4% of your salary that you defer into the 457 for 2023, CERF is matching 50 cents for every dollar you do. Now you can put in well more than 4%. It's just anything beyond 4% will not qualify for additional matches. The money you put in on a voluntary basis goes into the 457. The match money is deposited into the 401A plan. Any additional questions come up on that, Connie?
No, I believe that is the final question. So do we want, let's just give it a couple more minutes to see if anybody, again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat function, and I'm keeping an eye on that. But thank you, Robert, for a very, very thorough presentation on all of the wonderful resources and things to consider. And there's a lot to consider when it comes to retiring. And thanks again to Nancy as well for her coverage of the pension. And again, please utilize the resources that are available with pension, with the CERF specialists who are on board to help you through this time. As you can see by the presentations today, there's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of questions that can come up, but you have folks like Nancy, and then on the 457 and 401A side, Robert Eastburn to help you navigate all of that. So let me take a quick look and make sure we don't have any questions before we wrap up. I'm not seeing any more. So with that, thank you again, Nancy, and thank you again, Robert, and thanks to all of those who attended this morning. We hope you found the information helpful. Everybody have a good day.